She was standing alone on her porch with a rifle in her hands when the bullet tore through her shoulder. 4 men had come to steal her land. She killed 2 of them before she fell. But here is the part nobody expected. A stranger rode out of the darkness that night. A man with secrets of his own. A man running from a past that had burned everything he ever loved to ashes. He pressed his hand against her wound and rode her to town while her blood soaked through his shirt. She should have died that night. Instead, she discovered a truth that would shake her entire world. Her mother had been murdered by her own sister. Her father had been poisoned, and half of the richest empire in Idaho Territory belonged to her by blood. But the man who stole it all was not going to let her live long enough to claim it. What happens when a woman with nothing left to lose meets a man with nothing left to live for? What happens when 2 broken people decide to fight back against an enemy who has never lost? This story will remind you that your darkest moment might be the beginning of your greatest chapter. That the people who try to break you often end up showing you exactly how strong you really are. And that sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you lost. If you believe that courage deserves to be celebrated, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below and tell me this. Have you ever had to fight for something everyone else told you to let go? I read every single comment, and your story might inspire someone else who is going through the same battle right now. Now sit back, relax, and let me tell you the story of Clara Thorne, the woman who was shot defending her land. The bullet tore through Clara Thorne's shoulder, just as the Idaho sun began its descent behind the jagged peaks of the Sawtooth Mountains. Blood bloomed across her cotton shirt like a red flower opening in fast motion. And she knew in that single heartbeat that everything her father had fought for might slip through her fingers like water through a sieve. She had been standing on her front porch with her Winchester rifle raised, facing down 4 men who had no business being on her land. 4 men with cold eyes and loaded guns. 4 men who claimed her 200 acres of Snake River Valley belonged to someone named Victor Maddox, a name she had heard whispered in town like a curse. The leader was a man called Silas Cutter. Clara had never seen him before this evening, but she would remember his face for the rest of her days. A scar ran down the left side of his jaw like someone had tried to cut his throat and missed. His voice was cold as January steel when he spoke. "Miss Thorne," he had said, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. "Mr. Maddox don't take kindly to refusal. Last person who told him no, well, the sheriff never did find enough bones to bury." Clara had listened to their demands with her finger resting on the trigger. They wanted her to sign over her deed. They wanted her to walk away from the land her mother had inherited from her grandfather. The land her father had worked until his last breath 8 months ago. They wanted her to give up everything she had left in this world for $500, and to promise they would not kill her. She had pretended to lower her rifle. She had pretended to surrender. Then she had shot the man on her left, clean through the chest. The others scattered like startled crows, and for one glorious moment Clara thought she might actually win. She swung her Winchester toward Silas Cutter, but he was faster than any man she had ever seen. His Colt .45 barked twice, and the second bullet found her shoulder. The impact spun her backward against the wooden planks of the house her father had built with his own 2 hands. Pain exploded through her body like white fire. But Clara Thorne was not the kind of woman who fell easily. She braced herself against the porch rail and fired again, taking down a second man before her rifle slipped from her grip. Then something unexpected happened. Gunfire erupted from the tree line to the north. Someone out there in the gathering darkness was shooting at Maddox's men, and whoever it was had a rifle and knew how to use it. The third attacker dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Silas Cutter's head whipped toward the trees, then back to Clara, then to the approaching dust cloud from the south where a rider was charging straight toward them at full gallop. The remaining gunman grabbed Silas by the arm. "We gotta go," he shouted. "That's Beckett." Something flickered across Silas Cutter's scarred face. Recognition. And maybe just a trace of fear. He looked toward the approaching rider one more time, and Clara saw his lips move. "Beckett. Thought you died back in Colorado." The rider pulled his horse up short at the edge of the yard, a tall man with broad shoulders and eyes the color of storm clouds. His hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," he said. Silas Cutter held the stranger's gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled, thin and cold as a knife blade, and mounted his horse. "This ain't over, Mercer," he said. "Or whatever you're calling yourself these days. Maddox has a long memory." Then he and his companion rode off into the purple twilight, leaving behind 2 dead men and a whole lot of questions. Clara pressed her hand against her wounded shoulder, feeling warm blood seep between her fingers. The world was starting to tilt sideways. She tried to raise her rifle again as the stranger approached, but her arms would not obey her. "Easy now," the man said, swinging down from his saddle. His boots hit the ground hard, and then he was running toward her, moving faster than a man his size should be able to move. Clara tried to speak, tried to tell him to get off her property, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. She felt herself falling. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. "I got you," the stranger said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks tumbling in a riverbed. "You're gonna be all right. Just stay with me." He was already tearing strips from his own shirt, pressing the cloth firmly against her wound. The pressure sent fresh waves of agony through her body, but it also cleared her head enough to speak. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper. "Get off my land." The stranger almost smiled. "Not a chance, ma'am. You've been shot, and those men might come back. We need to get you to town." "To a doctor." "I can handle myself," Clara insisted, even as the darkness crept closer. "I can see that," the stranger said, and there was something like admiration in his voice. "You took down 2 of them. That's more than most men could do. But even the toughest rancher can't stop bleeding by sheer will alone. My name is Caleb Beckett, and I'm going to help you whether you like it or not." Before Clara could protest further, he scooped her up in his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. The world spun, and she had to close her eyes against the nausea that rose in her throat. She felt him moving quickly, heard the sound of his horse shifting its weight. Then she was being lifted into the saddle, and every movement sent fresh fire through her shoulder. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, refusing to cry out. Caleb Beckett swung up behind her, one arm wrapping around her waist to hold her steady, while his other hand pressed the makeshift bandage firmly against her wound. "Keep pressure here," he said, guiding her own hand to hold the cloth. "Can you do that?" "Yes," Clara said through gritted teeth. "Good. Now hold on. It's about an hour ride to Boise, and I ain't planning to go slow." The horse started moving, and every jolt sent fire through Clara's body. But she was aware of other things, too. The solid warmth of Caleb Beckett's chest against her back, his arm around her waist like an iron band, keeping her from sliding off the saddle. The steady rhythm of his breathing, calm and controlled, even as they raced through the darkness. "Stay with me," he said close to her ear. "Talk to me. Tell me about your land." Clara tried to focus on his words rather than the pain. 200 acres, she said. Good water from the creek. My father cleared 50 acres himself, built the house and barn. We ran cattle, some horses. It's good land, Caleb agreed. I saw it when I was tracking those men. You've been working it alone since your father passed. It was not a question, but Clara answered anyway, since last winter. Consumption took him. I'm sorry, Caleb said, and he sounded like he meant it. The horse stumbled slightly, and Clara gasped as the movement jarred her wound. Caleb's arm tightened around her. Easy, he murmured. I got you. Keep talking. Tell me more about the ranch. Why? Clara asked weakly. Because I need you to stay awake. And because I want to know. So Clara talked. She told him about her mother, who had died giving birth to her, whose face she knew only from a single faded photograph. She told him about learning to ride before she could walk, about helping her father with cattle drives, about the first time she had broken a wild horse on her own. She told him about the loneliness of the past 8 months, working the land alone, watching other families come and go, wondering if she was a fool to try to hold on to this place by herself. You're no fool, Caleb said firmly. You're brave, braver than most men I know. Your father would be proud. Those words broke something inside her, and Clara felt tears slide down her cheeks. She had not cried since her father died. There had been too much work to do, too many decisions to make, too many threats to face. But now, held in the arms of this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere to save her life, she could not hold back the grief any longer. "You're not alone anymore," Caleb said quietly. "I got you." Clara drifted in and out of consciousness after that. Sometimes she heard Caleb talking to her, asking questions about the ranch, about her plans for the future. Sometimes she heard herself answering, though later she would not remember what she said. Once, in a moment of clarity, she looked down and saw something that made her breath catch. Caleb wore a silver ring on his right hand. And somewhere in the fog of pain and memory, she heard her father's voice. "Don't trust the man with the silver ring," her father had said in the final days of his illness, when fever had stolen his reason. "Promise me, Clara. Don't trust him." She had thought it was delirium, just the ramblings of a dying man. Now she was not so sure. But before she could say anything, before she could ask Caleb about the ring, the lights of Boise appeared on the horizon, and he was urging his horse to a faster pace. "Hold on," he said. "We're almost there. Just hold on a little longer." Clara wanted to demand answers. She wanted to know who this man really was, why Silas Cutter had called him Mercer, what connection he had to the men who wanted her land. But the darkness was pulling her under, and she did not have the strength to fight it anymore. The last thing she heard before she lost consciousness was Caleb Beckett's voice, rough with something that might have been worry. "You're gonna live," he said. "But you might wish you'd never met me." Then there was nothing but black. Dr. Sarah Winters had seen more than her share of gunshot wounds. She had served as a surgeon for the Union Army during the war, had worked in field hospitals where men died screaming for their mothers, had learned to cut and stitch and cauterize while artillery shells exploded close enough to shake the operating table. Nothing in her 55 years had surprised her much anymore. But when Caleb Mercer burst through her door carrying a bleeding woman in his arms, she felt something close to shock. "Good Lord," she said, already moving to clear her examination table. "Caleb Mercer, I thought you were dead." The man's jaw tightened. "Beckett," he said, his voice hard as flint. "Name's Beckett now. Save her." Sarah did not argue. There would be time for questions later, assuming the young woman on her table survived the night. She worked quickly, cutting away the blood-soaked shirt, examining the wound. The bullet had gone clean through the shoulder, missing the bone and the major arteries by less than an inch. Lucky. Or maybe Providence had been watching over this girl. She noted the caliber of the wound. Colt .45, an expensive weapon, not the sort common bandits carried. Whoever had shot this woman had money or worked for someone who did. "She's lost a lot of blood," Sarah said, not looking up from her work. "But she will live." The bullet passed through clean. No fragments to dig out. She heard Caleb release a breath he had been holding. "Good. That's good." Sarah glanced at him as she threaded her needle. He looked different from the last time she had seen him, 3 years ago in Colorado. Older. Harder. There were new lines around his eyes and a weight in his gaze that had not been there before. And when he turned toward the window, she saw burn scars on his neck that made her stomach clench. She had heard rumors about what happened to his wife, about the fire, about the accusations. She had not believed them then. She did not believe them now. "Go wait outside," she told him. "This will take a while. There's coffee in the kitchen if you need it." Caleb hesitated, looking at the unconscious woman on the table. Then he nodded and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. Sarah got to work. In the hallway, Caleb leaned against the wall and tried to slow his racing heart. The woman, Clara Thorne, was going to survive. He should feel relieved. He did feel relieved. But he also felt something else, something he had not felt in a very long time. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the envelope he had taken from the porch of Clara's ranch. Inside was a hand-drawn map marking several properties in the Snake River Valley. Most of them had been crossed out. The Thorne Ranch was circled in red ink with the notation MH Final. In the corner was a seal he knew all too well. Maddox Holdings. Caleb closed his eyes and saw Rebecca's face, his wife, the woman he had loved more than his own life, the woman who had died screaming in a fire set by Victor Maddox's men. After 4 years of searching, 4 years of running, 4 years of following cold trails and dead ends, he had finally found proof that Maddox was still operating, still grabbing land, still destroying anyone who got in his way. And Clara Thorne was next on his list. Caleb put the envelope away and pulled out an old photograph, yellowed with age and worn soft from handling. Rebecca smiled up at him from the picture, frozen forever at 23 years old. On the back, in her careful handwriting, were the words, "For my Caleb Rebecca, 1883. "I found him," Caleb whispered to the photograph. "I'm close now. I promise you, Becca, I'm going to make him pay." He tucked the picture back into his shirt and headed for the saloon. He needed information, and in a town like Boise, the saloon was the best place to get it. The sign above the door read, "Tucker's Saloon," in faded paint. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of cheap whiskey. A handful of men sat at scattered tables playing cards or nursing drinks. A piano player in the corner plunked out a half-hearted tune. Behind the bar stood a heavy-set man with a gray beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Caleb recognized the type, a man who had seen too much and forgotten none of it. "Whiskey," Caleb said, taking a seat at the bar. The bartender poured without comment, then leaned his elbows on the counter. "You're new in town," he said. "I know every face in Boise, and I ain't seen yours before, just passing through," Caleb said. "Uh-huh." The bartender's eyes flicked to the pistol at Caleb's hip, then back to his face. "Name's Bill Tucker. Folks call me Whiskey Bill. You got a name, stranger?" "Caleb Beckett." Bill nodded slowly. "Beckett. That's a Colorado name. You ain't running from trouble, are you, Mr. Beckett?" Caleb almost smiled. "Just looking for work. What kind of work? The kind that pays." Bill studied him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You hear about the shooting out at the Thorne place tonight?" Caleb kept his face neutral. "Heard something about it." "Clara Thorne," Bill said. "Tough girl. Been running that ranch alone since her daddy died. Someone finally made a move on her land, looks like." "Someone?" Bill shrugged. "Folks around here know better than to say names out loud. But between you and me, there's a man been buying up land all through this valley. Buying or taking. Folks who say no tend to have accidents, fires, disappearances, that sort of thing." Caleb took a slow sip of his whiskey. "This man got a name?" "Maddox," Bill said, barely above a whisper. "Victor Maddox. Runs something called Maddox Holdings out of Chicago. Got more money than God and fewer scruples than the devil. Anyone tried to stop him?" Bill laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The sheriff is on his payroll, the judge too, most likely. Couple years back, a U.S. Marshal came sniffing around. Heard he got too close to the truth. Then his wife died in a fire and he got blamed for it. Disappeared after that." Caleb's hand tightened on his glass. "That's so." Bill nodded. "Clara Thorne's the last holdout in this part of the valley. Her daddy refused to sell 3 times, then he died real sudden-like. Lung sickness, they said. But there are folks who think he was poisoned." Caleb filed that information away. "What about Clara? She got any family? Anyone who might help her?" Bill's expression shifted. "Something complicated." "That's the interesting part," he said. "About a month after old Samuel Thorne died, a man showed up claiming to be his son. Half-brother to Clara, from a first marriage nobody knew about. Name of Elijah Thorne." "What happened?" "Clara ran him off at gunpoint, said she didn't have a brother and didn't want one. Is he still around?" Bill shrugged. "Comes and goes. Some folks think he's trouble. Others think he might be the only real family that girl has left in the world. Hard to say which." Before Caleb could ask more questions, the saloon doors swung open, and a young man walked in wearing a deputy star on his chest. He was maybe 25, with earnest eyes and a jaw that had not quite finished hardening into manhood. "Evening, Bill," the deputy said, taking the stool next to Caleb. He glanced at the stranger, curious but trying not to show it. "New in town?" "Just passing through," Caleb said. The deputy nodded. "Name's Jake Holloway, deputy sheriff." He offered his hand, and Caleb shook it. "You hear about the trouble out at Thorn Ranch tonight?" "Heard something," Caleb said carefully. 4 men tried to force Clara Thorne off her land. She shot 2 of them dead before they got her. Somebody brought her into town, dropped her at Doc Winter's place. Holloway paused, studying Caleb's face. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, mister?" "Beckett. And no, I just rode into town an hour ago." Holloway held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then he shrugged and turned to Bill. "Give me a coffee, will you, Bill? Going to be a long night." Caleb finished his whiskey and left enough coins on the bar to cover it twice over. He had learned what he needed to know. Now it was time to check on Clara Thorne and figure out his next move. He found Dr. Winters in her kitchen, washing blood from her hands. "She will live," the doctor said without turning around. Bullet went clean through. "She'll need to rest that arm for several weeks, but she should make a full recovery." "Good," Caleb said. "Can I see her?" "She's sleeping. The laudanum will keep her out until morning, most likely." Sarah dried her hands and turned to face him. "Now suppose you tell me what you're really doing here, Caleb Mercer. I told you. Name's Beckett now. And I told you I don't believe in coincidences. You show up in Boise the same night someone tries to kill Clara Thorne. You bring her to me with a gunshot wound. And you think I'm not going to ask questions?" Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Her father had something I need. Evidence. Against the same people who killed Rebecca." Sarah's expression softened. "I heard about your wife. I didn't believe what they said about you. Nobody did, except the people who mattered. So you've been running? For 3 years?" "Hunting," Caleb corrected. "There's a difference." He paused. "Maddox is here, Sarah. He's been buying up land all through this valley, same as he did in Colorado. Clara Thorne's ranch is the last piece he needs. And I think her father knew something Maddox was willing to kill for." Sarah absorbed this. "And Clara? She's in danger, more than she knows." Caleb met the doctor's eyes. "I need to talk to her when she wakes up. I need to know what her father told her before he died." Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You can stay," she said. "There's a cot in the back room. But Caleb," she hesitated, "that girl has been through enough. If you're only here to use her—" "I'm here to help her," Caleb said. "Whatever it costs me." Sarah seemed to accept that. She gestured toward the hallway. "Go on then, get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." Caleb did not sleep. He sat in the hallway outside Clara's room, his back against the wall and his pistol across his knees, watching the door and listening to the sounds of the night. Just before dawn, he heard her stirring. A moment later, the door opened, and Clara Thorne stood there in a borrowed nightgown, her wounded arm in a sling and her eyes blazing with fury and questions. "Where is my gun?" she demanded. Caleb stood up slowly. "Somewhere you can't use it to shoot me." He picked up the cup of coffee he had prepared and offered it to her. "Drink this. We need to talk." Clara did not take the coffee. "Why should I trust a man who won't give his real name?" Caleb blinked. "Who told you that?" "I heard the doctor call you Mercer." For a moment, something flickered across Caleb's face. Then it was gone, replaced by the same unreadable mask he had worn all night. "You want to know who I am," he said quietly. "Fine. But first, you tell me something. Do you know why your father really died?" Clara froze. Her father had died of lung sickness. Everyone said so. The doctor had said so. But the way Caleb asked the question, the look in his storm-colored eyes, told her that maybe everyone had been wrong. "What do you mean?" she whispered. "What do you know about my father?" "More than you want to hear," Caleb said. "And less than I need to." He set down the coffee cup and met her gaze. "My real name is Caleb Mercer. I was a U.S. Marshal in Colorado Territory. 3 years ago, I was investigating a man named Victor Maddox, the same man who sent those gunmen to your ranch tonight. I was close to bringing him down when he had my wife murdered and framed me for it. I've been hunting him ever since, and I believe your father had evidence that could help me destroy him. Clara stared at him. Her mind was racing, trying to fit these pieces together with everything her father had said and done in the months before his death. The late nights, the secret digging near the barn, the journal he had hidden and she had never found, and the warning he had given her, fevered and desperate, in the final days of his life. Don't trust the man with the silver ring. She looked down at Caleb's hand and saw it there, gleaming dully in the lamplight. A silver ring on his right hand. Her father had known. Somehow he had known this man would come. But had he been warning her away from Caleb Mercer, or warning her about someone else entirely? There was only one way to find out. Clara reached out and took the coffee cup from the table. She took a long sip, grimacing at the bitter taste. And then she met Caleb's eyes. "Start talking," she said. "Tell me everything. And may God help them both if he was lying." Caleb told her everything. He told her about his years as a U.S. Marshal, tracking outlaws across Colorado territory. He told her about the first time he heard the name Victor Maddox, whispered in connection with a string of suspicious land purchases and convenient deaths. He told her about Rebecca, the school teacher's daughter who had become his wife, who had believed in justice as fiercely as he did. And he told her about the night he came home to find their cabin engulfed in flames, with Rebecca still inside. "I tried to save her," Caleb said, his voice flat and hollow. "I ran into the fire. Someone pulled me back. By the time they let me go, it was too late." He touched the burn scars on his neck unconsciously. "These are the only thing I have left of that night. These and the memory of her screaming." Clara listened in silence. She did not interrupt, did not ask questions. She simply watched his face as he spoke, searching for any sign of deception. She found none. "After the fire," Caleb continued, "everything fell apart. The evidence I had collected against Maddox disappeared from the marshal's office. My own deputies testified that I had been acting strange, obsessive. And then someone, I never found out who, told the authorities that I had killed Rebecca myself, that I had started the fire to cover up her murder. Why would anyone believe that? Because Maddox wanted them to believe it. He owns people, Clara. Judges, sheriffs, politicians. He bought witnesses who swore they saw me arguing with Rebecca the night she died. He paid a doctor to say the fire was started with kerosene that matched a can from our barn." Caleb shook his head. "I had two choices: stand trial in a court he controlled, or run. So you ran. I ran. And I have been hunting him ever since. For 3 years, I have followed his trail across 4 territories, always one step behind. Every time I got close, he disappeared. Every time I found a witness willing to talk, they ended up dead, until now. What changed?" "Your father," Caleb said. "Samuel Thorne was one of the few people who ever stood up to Maddox and lived to tell about it. He refused to sell his land 3 times, and according to my sources, he had documents that proved Maddox had been forging deeds to steal property all through this valley." Clara's breath caught. "That's why they killed him." "I think so. I think Maddox finally got tired of waiting and had your father poisoned. But Samuel must have hidden the evidence somewhere because Maddox is still looking for it. That's why those men came to your ranch tonight. They weren't just trying to run you off. They were searching. Searching for what? I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me." Clara was quiet for a long moment. The pain in her shoulder had faded to a dull throb, but her mind was spinning with memories and questions. "There was something," she said finally. 6 months before my father died, he started acting strange, staying up late, digging around the old barn. One night I caught him burning papers. But he hid something too, a leather journal. I saw him put it inside his coat. Do you know what was in it? No, I asked him. But he just said there were things he knew that I shouldn't. Things that could get us both killed. Did you ever find the journal? Clara shook her head. After he died, I searched everywhere. The house, the barn, the fields. I never found it. Caleb leaned forward. What else did he tell you? Anything, even if it doesn't seem important. Clara closed her eyes, trying to remember. There was one thing, she said slowly. Right before he died, when the fever was bad and he wasn't making sense anymore, he grabbed my hand and told me that if anyone ever asked about the land, I should tell them it belonged to my mother. Your mother? Eliza. Eliza Thorne. She died giving birth to me. I never knew her. Caleb's expression sharpened. Your mother owned the land? Not your father? I don't know. I always assumed it was Papa's, but he was so insistent. He kept saying, Eliza's land, Eliza's land. And then he said something else. He was quiet for a moment. Don't trust the man with the silver ring. Caleb's hand moved involuntarily to the ring on his right hand. Clara watched the movement with narrowed eyes. Yeah, she said. I noticed that. Care to explain? This ring belonged to my father, Caleb said. He gave it to me before he died. It's the only thing I have left of him. And yet my father warned me about a man with a silver ring, right before someone had him killed. I don't know what your father knew or didn't know, Caleb said. But I can tell you this. I am not your enemy, Clara. I saved your life tonight. You saved me because you need something from me, Clara shot back. Don't pretend it was charity. To her surprise, Caleb did not argue. You're right, he said. I need that evidence. But that doesn't mean I don't care what happens to you. Maddox has already killed your father. He's tried to kill you once. He won't stop until he has what he wants or until you're dead. His gray eyes met hers. I can help you, but you have to trust me. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Trust you? I don't even know you. Then get to know me. Caleb stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gray light of dawn. I'm going to stay in Boise for a while. Whether you want my help or not, I'm going after Maddox. He's here, in this valley, and I'm closer than I've ever been to taking him down. If you want to work together, we can. If not, he shrugged. He'll find another way. Clara studied his back, the set of his shoulders, the scars on his neck. Everything about him screamed danger. Her father had warned her about a man with a silver ring, but her father was dead, and Maddox's men had put a bullet in her shoulder, and she was running out of options. If we work together, she said slowly, what exactly does that mean? Caleb turned back to face her. It means we find that journal. We find whatever evidence your father hid, and we use it to destroy Victor Maddox before he destroys us. And what do I get out of it? You get to keep your land and your life. Clara was silent for a long moment. Then she held out her uninjured hand. Partners, she said, but I have conditions. You don't keep secrets from me. You don't make decisions about my ranch without asking me first. And you follow my lead when we're on my property. Caleb looked at her outstretched hand. Then, slowly, he reached out and shook it. Partners, he agreed. But I have a condition, too. When things get dangerous, and they will get dangerous, you let me protect you. Clara's eyes flashed. I don't need protection. You got shot tonight, Caleb pointed out, by 4 men. You took down 2 of them, which is more than most people could do. But if I hadn't shown up when I did, I'd have taken down all 4, Clara said through gritted teeth. Caleb smiled, just barely, the first real smile she had seen from him. I believe you, but it'll be better if you live to prove it. Before Clara could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Winters entered, carrying a tray with breakfast. Good. You're awake, she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. And talking, which is a good sign. Though I hope you're not planning to do anything foolish like leave this clinic before that wound has healed. I have a ranch to run, Clara said. You have a bullet hole in your shoulder, Sarah countered. The ranch can wait a few days. Dr. Winters is right, Caleb said. You need to rest. I'll go out to your place, check on things, make sure Maddox's men haven't come back. Clara wanted to argue, but her body was already betraying her. The effort of sitting up and talking had exhausted her, and the laudanum was wearing off, bringing the pain back in waves. "Fine," she said reluctantly, "but you're coming straight back here tonight, and you're telling me everything you find." Caleb nodded. He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she could not quite read. "Get some rest, Clara Thorne," he said. "We're going to need you strong for what's coming." Then he was gone, and Clara was left alone with her pain and her questions and the memory of her father's warning echoing in her mind. Don't trust the man with the silver ring. But what choice did she have? Clara slept through most of that day, waking occasionally when Dr. Winters came to check her wound or bring her food. Each time she opened her eyes, she expected to see Caleb Beckett sitting in the chair by her bed. He was never there. By late afternoon, she was too restless to sleep anymore. She forced herself to eat the broth Sarah brought her, then insisted on getting dressed and walking around the clinic. "You're going to tear those stitches," Sarah warned. "Then stitch me up again," Clara said. "I can't just lie there doing nothing." She made it to the front room before her legs gave out. She collapsed into a chair by the window and sat there watching the street outside, waiting for Caleb to return. The sun was setting when she finally saw him ride into town. He looked tired, covered in dust, and there was a grimness in his face that told her the news was not good. He tied his horse outside the clinic and came in without knocking. "What did you find?" Clara asked. Caleb pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. "Your ranch has been destroyed," he said bluntly. "Barn burned to the ground, fences torn down, livestock scattered or stolen, but the house is untouched." Clara's jaw tightened. "They want me to come back. They want me to see what they've done." Caleb nodded. "There was a note pinned to your door." He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Last chance. $500. Red Canyon, Saturday. That's in 3 days. Yes." Clara took the note and stared at it. Her hand was shaking, but not from weakness, from rage. "I found something else," Caleb said. "Under the barn, where the fire was hottest, there was a root cellar." Clara's head snapped up. "I forgot about that. Papa used to store preserves down there when I was little. Someone got there before me. The cellar door was open and everything inside was gone. But I found this." He held up a half-burned piece of paper. "It's not much. Most of the writing is destroyed, but I could make out a few words." He handed her the paper. Clara squinted at the charred remains, trying to decipher the fragments of text. "Maddox Holdings," she read aloud. "Forged signature. And then Eliza's land." She looked up at Caleb. "My mother." "I think your father was keeping records," Caleb said. "Evidence of everything Maddox was doing in this valley. And I think he hid the most important documents somewhere else. Somewhere safe." Clara stared at the burned paper, her mind racing. Somewhere safe. Eliza's land. And then, suddenly, she remembered. "There was something else my father said," she whispered, "in his delirium at the end. He said if anything happened to him, I should go to where Eliza's heart rests, where her heart rests. What does that mean?" "I don't know." She shook her head. "I never knew where my mother was buried. Papa never talked about it. I assumed she was in the church cemetery with everyone else, but I looked once and there was no marker. So she's buried somewhere else. Somewhere on your property? Maybe. Papa had places he went when he wanted to be alone, places he never took me." Caleb leaned forward. "Can you find them?" "I can try. But not tonight. Not like this." "No," Caleb agreed. "You need more time to heal. But we don't have much time. Saturday is 3 days away, and Maddox knows we're still alive." Before Clara could respond, there was a commotion outside. Shouts, running feet. And then the clinic door burst open. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the same shade of brown as Clara's father, eyes the same shade of brown as her own. "Clara," he said, "thank God you're alive." She stared at him, her heart suddenly pounding. She had only seen him once before, 6 weeks ago, when he had shown up at her ranch claiming to be family. She had run him off at gunpoint. "Elijah," she said, "what are you doing here?" Elijah Thorne stepped into the room, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. His eyes flicked to Caleb, sizing him up, then back to Clara. "I came to warn you," he said, "but it looks like I'm too late." He glanced at her bandaged shoulder. "How bad is it?" "I was shot," Clara said flatly, "by men who work for Victor Maddox, the same men you seem to know an awful lot about." Elijah's expression flickered. "You still don't trust me. You show up out of nowhere claiming to be my brothers. You demand a share of our father's land. And now you appear right after someone tries to kill me. Give me one good reason I should trust you." "Because I know things," Elijah said. "Things about our father. Things about Maddox. Things that could save your life." Caleb stood, his hand resting on his pistol. "Then talk," he said. "And it better be good." Elijah looked between them. Then he reached slowly into his coat and pulled out a leather-bound journal. Clara's breath caught. "I found this in the root cellar 2 days ago," Elijah said. "I got there before Maddox's men did." He held out the journal. "Our father kept records of everything. Every piece of land Maddox stole. Every person he killed or drove away. Every bribe he paid." Clara reached for the journal with trembling hands. She opened it and saw her father's familiar handwriting, cramped and precise, filling page after page. "Maddox approached me again today," she read aloud, "offered $5,000 for the land. I refused. He doesn't know about Eliza's papers. If he did, he'd kill me tomorrow instead of next year." She looked up at Elijah. "Eliza's papers? What does that mean?" "Keep reading," Elijah said. "The last page." Clara turned to the end of the journal. The final entry was dated 3 days before her father died. "I fear my time is short. Someone has been watching the house. I can feel it. If I die before Clara is ready to know the truth, she must find the original documents. They are hidden where Eliza's heart rests, under the stone that bears no name. Clara, if you are reading this, know that I loved you more than life itself, and know that this land is yours by blood and by law. Your mother was Eliza Marie Hawthorne, daughter of James Hawthorne of San Francisco. This land was her inheritance, not mine. I was only its caretaker. The papers will prove everything. Find them, and make Maddox pay for what he has done." Clara could not speak. She could not breathe. Her entire life, everything she had believed about her family, was shifting beneath her feet like sand in a windstorm. "Hawthorne," she whispered. "My mother's maiden name was Hawthorne." "James Hawthorne was one of the richest men in California," Caleb said slowly. "He died about 30 years ago, left his fortune to his 2 daughters. 2 daughters, Clara repeated. "My mother had a sister?" Elijah and Caleb exchanged a look. "You don't know," Elijah said. "Clara, your mother's sister was named Victoria. Victoria Hawthorne." Clara shook her head. "I don't understand. What does that have to do with Maddox?" "Victoria Hawthorne," Caleb said, "married Victor Maddox 25 years ago." The words hung in the air like gun smoke. Clara stared at him. "Are you saying that Victor Maddox is married to my aunt?" "I am saying," Caleb replied grimly, "that half of everything Maddox owns rightfully belongs to you." The ride back to the ranch took most of the morning. Clara insisted on going despite Dr. Winter's objections. And in the end, Caleb drove her in a borrowed wagon to spare her shoulder from the jarring of horseback riding. Elijah rode alongside them on a dun-colored horse that Clara did not recognize. She watched him from the corner of her eye, still not sure what to make of his sudden appearance or his convenient rescue of the journal. "Tell me about yourself," she said finally. "If you're really my brother, I should know something about you." "Half-brother," Elijah corrected. "Different mothers. Our father married mine first, back in Missouri. I was born in '64, right in the middle of the war." "What happened to your mother?" "She died when I was 8. Influenza." "After that, Pa," he faltered. "I was told he abandoned us, that he ran off with another woman, and left me with my granddaddy." Clara frowned. Papa would never abandon his child. I know that now. Elijah's voice was bitter. My granddaddy lied to me my whole life, told me Samuel Thorne was a worthless coward who left his family to starve. I believed it. I grew up hating a man I never knew. So what changed? Granddaddy died last spring. I found letters in his things, letters from our father begging to see me, and responses from Granddaddy threatening to have Pa killed if he ever came near me again. Clara's hands tightened on the wagon seat. Your grandfather kept you apart on purpose. He sold our father to a mining company. Elijah spoke the words like they were poison in his mouth. Contract labor, basically slavery. Pa worked in those mines for 2 years before he escaped. By then, Granddaddy had moved us out to California. Pa could never find us. My God. After he escaped, Pa wandered for years. Eventually, he ended up in Idaho and met your mother. They fell in love, got married, built that ranch. He made a new life for himself because he thought he'd lost his old one forever. Elijah looked at Clara. I don't blame him for that. I don't blame him for anything. He was a victim, same as me. Clara did not know what to say. All her life she had known her father as a quiet, hard-working man who rarely spoke of the past. Now she was learning that his silence had hidden a lifetime of tragedy. Why did you come to the ranch 6 weeks ago? She asked, demanding your share of the land. Because I was angry, Elijah admitted. I'd just learned the truth about what Granddaddy did, and I needed someone to blame. I thought maybe Pa had forgotten about me, made a new family, moved on. I wanted to confront him, but he was already dead. So you took your anger out on me. Yeah, I did, and I'm sorry for that. They rode in silence for a while. The landscape around them was beautiful in the morning light. Green hills rolling down to the silver ribbon of the Snake River. Hard to believe that this peaceful valley had been the site of so much violence. You said you found the journal before Maddox's men did, Clara said finally. How did you know where to look? I didn't. I was watching the ranch, trying to decide whether to try talking to you again, when I saw them ride up. 4 men with guns. I knew something bad was about to happen. You were there when they attacked me? I was in the tree line on the north side of the property. Elijah met her eyes. When they shot you, I shot back. Took one of them down. Clara stared at him. That was you? Yeah. She remembered the mysterious gunfire from the trees. She had wondered who her unknown protector was. Now she knew. Why didn't you show yourself afterward? Because by then Beckett was there and I didn't know if I could trust him. I followed you both into town, watched from a distance, waited to see what would happen. And the journal. I went back to the ranch after you left with Beckett, found the root cellar under the burned barn. The door was already open, but whoever searched it before me missed the hiding spot under the floorboards. Elijah shrugged. Pa was clever. He knew someone might come looking. Clara turned to Caleb, who had been listening in silence. Did you search the root cellar? I found it, Caleb said. But I didn't find any hiding spot, just ashes and debris. Elijah almost smiled. Our father was a careful man. The hiding spot was under a loose board in the corner with a layer of packed dirt on top. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd never find it. Caleb said nothing, but Clara could see he was not entirely convinced. They crested a hill, and suddenly the Thorne Ranch spread out before them, or what was left of it. The barn was a charred skeleton, blackened timbers pointing at the sky like accusing fingers. The fences had been torn down in a dozen places. The fields where her cattle should have been grazing were empty, but the house still stood, exactly as Caleb had described, untouched, waiting. Clara climbed down from the wagon before Caleb could help her. She walked toward the house on legs that felt wooden, her eyes taking in the destruction around her. Everything her father had built, everything she had fought to maintain. Gone. She stopped at the porch and saw the knife marks where Maddox's note had been pinned to the door. She could still read the faint outline of words burned into the wood beneath. Last chance. Red Canyon, Saturday. "They want me scared," she said. Her voice was steady. "They want me to give up and run." "Are you scared?" Caleb asked. Clara turned to face him. She saw concern in his gray eyes and something else. Respect, maybe, or admiration. "I am terrified," she said honestly. "But I am also angry, and right now the anger is winning." She walked into the house. It looked exactly as she had left it 3 days ago. The kitchen table where she had eaten breakfast alone. The chair by the fireplace where her father used to sit. The rifle rack on the wall, now missing her Winchester. "My father's shotgun," she said. "Is it still here?" "I left it where I found it." Caleb pointed to the corner. Clara retrieved the shotgun and checked that it was loaded. Then she turned back to the two men standing in her doorway. "Here is what we are going to do," she said. "We are going to find my mother's grave. We are going to get those papers. And then we are going to destroy Victor Maddox." She saw Elijah and Caleb exchange a glance. "We," Caleb repeated. "We," Clara confirmed. "Unless one of you has a problem with that." Neither of them did. They spent the rest of the day searching the property. Clara led them to every spot she could remember her father visiting. The old oak tree on the northern hill, the pond where they used to fish, the outcropping of rocks at the far edge of the property. Nothing. By late afternoon, Clara was exhausted. Her shoulder was throbbing, and despite her determination, she had to admit she needed to rest. "Well, try again tomorrow," Caleb said, helping her back to the house. "You need sleep." "We don't have time for sleep," Clara protested. "Saturday is in 2 days. And you're no good to anyone if you collapse. Get some rest. Elijah and I will take turns standing watch." Clara wanted to argue, but her body was already giving up. She let Caleb guide her to her old bedroom, let him help her onto the bed. "You'll be right outside," he said. "Nothing is getting past me." She closed her eyes, meaning to rest for just a moment. She slept for 12 hours. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window and the smell of coffee was drifting through the house. She stumbled into the kitchen to find Elijah standing at the stove making breakfast. "Caleb went to check the perimeter," he said without turning around. "Should be back soon. How do you like your eggs?" "I can make my own breakfast." "Yeah, with one arm and a bullet wound." "Sit down, Clara. Let someone help you for once." Clara sat. She was too tired and too hungry to argue. Elijah slid a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her, then poured 2 cups of coffee and took a seat across the table. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Depends what it is. Why did you stay?" "After Pa died, I mean. Most women would have sold the ranch and moved somewhere safer." Clara took a sip of her coffee. "This land is all I have left of my family. My mother died here. My father is buried here. Walking away would mean losing them both. Even if staying gets you killed? Even then." Elijah nodded slowly. "You really are his daughter." They ate in silence for a while, then Clara said, "What about you? Why are you staying?" "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I told you, I want to make things right. By helping me fight Maddox, by proving that I'm not the kind of man my grandfather was." Elijah looked down at his hands. "I spent my whole life believing lies, hating a father who never did anything wrong. I can't change the past, but I can change what happens next." The door opened and Caleb walked in, bringing with him the smell of horses and morning dew. "Perimeter's clear," he said. "No sign of Maddox's men. Yet." Clara pushed her plate away. "I thought of something while I was sleeping. A place we haven't looked." "Where?" "When I was little, my father used to take me on walks. We would go north, past the big oak, up to a ridge that overlooked the whole valley. There was a flat rock up there where we would sit and watch the sunset. He called it Eliza's Spot." Caleb and Elijah exchanged a look. "He named it after your mother," Caleb said. "I always thought it was just a name. But what if it wasn't? What if that's where she's buried?" They saddled the horses and set out within the hour. Clara rode behind Caleb on his horse, her wounded arm making it impossible to ride alone. Elijah followed close behind. The trail wound north through fields of tall grass, past the ancient oak tree, up a gentle slope to a ridge that overlooked the valley. And there, just as Clara remembered, was a flat rock formation jutting out over the hillside. But there was something else, something she had never noticed before, or maybe had simply never understood. A small headstone, so weathered by time that its surface was almost smooth. No name, no dates, just a simple cross carved into the stone. "Oh," Clara whispered. She dismounted clumsily, her injured arm making everything difficult. She walked to the headstone and knelt beside it, reaching out to touch the weathered stone. "Mama," she said softly, "I found you." Caleb gave her a moment. Then he said gently, "Clara, the papers." "Right." Clara blinked back tears and looked around. "Where Eliza's heart rests," the journal said, "under the stone that bears no name." Elijah was already searching. He paced around the gravesite, examining the ground with careful eyes. "Here," he said suddenly, "there's a flat stone about 3 feet from the headstone. Looks like it was placed deliberately." They dug with their bare hands, clawing at the hard-packed earth until they struck metal. A rusted tin box about the size of a Bible buried just beneath the surface. Clara lifted the box with trembling hands. The lid was corroded shut, but Caleb produced a knife and pried it open. Inside was a stack of papers, yellowed with age but still legible. And beneath the papers, a photograph. Clara lifted the photograph first. It showed 2 young women standing side by side. They had the same dark hair, the same high cheekbones, the same intelligent eyes. One of them was smiling. The other was not. "My mother," Clara breathed. "And her sister." She turned the photograph over. On the back, in faded ink, were written the words, "Eliza and Victoria Hawthorne, San Francisco, 1859. Clara set the photograph aside and picked up the papers. "Land deeds," she said, scanning the documents. "In my mother's name. Eliza Marie Hawthorne." And a letter. She read the letter aloud, her voice shaking. "My dearest Samuel, if I don't survive this night, make certain our daughter knows the truth when she is old enough. This land is not merely land. It is all that remains of my family. My father left it to me and my sister, but my sister Victoria sold her soul to the devil in exchange for wealth. She married a man named Maddox, and together they seek to claim my portion as well. These papers prove that half of the empire Maddox has built actually belongs to me and to our daughter after me. Keep them safe. Protect our child. Forever yours, Eliza." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Half of Maddox's empire," Elijah said slowly. "Clara, do you understand what this means?" "I understand," Clara said. Her voice was cold as winter. "I understand that my aunt and her husband have been stealing from my family for decades. I understand they had my father killed to cover their crimes. And I understand that they are going to pay for every single thing they've done." She tucked the papers into her coat and stood. "Let's go," she said. "We have work to do." They were halfway back to the house when they heard the gunshots. 3 shots, rapid fire, coming from the direction of town. Then a column of smoke began to rise on the horizon. Caleb pulled his horse to a stop. "That's Boise. Maddox," Clara said. "He is not waiting for Saturday." More gunshots, more smoke. The sound of screaming carried faintly on the wind. Elijah drew his rifle. "What do we do?" Caleb looked at Clara. "Your call. Those papers could end this, but only if we keep them safe." Clara did not hesitate. "We go to town," she said. "Those are my neighbors, my friends. I won't leave them to burn." She spurred the horse forward, and the 2 men followed. Behind them, the sun began to set over the mountains, painting the sky blood red. Boise was burning. 3 buildings were fully engulfed when Clara and the others arrived, flames leaping from window to window as people ran screaming in the streets. The general store, the land registry office, and what looked like a private residence were all ablaze, their wooden frames crackling and groaning as they collapsed inward. But it was not the fire that made Clara's blood run cold. It was what was happening at the bank. A group of men on horseback were pouring out of the building, their saddlebags bulging with what had to be stolen money. At the head of the group rode a figure Clara recognized even at this distance. Silas Cutter. "The diversion," Caleb said, his voice grim. "Burn half the town to cover a robbery." It's not about the money, Clara realized. Look. Shees was pointing at the land registry office, now collapsing into embers. They destroyed the records, all the land deeds, all the ownership documents. If those records are gone, nobody can prove who owns what, Elijah said. Nobody except me. Clara touched the papers hidden inside her coat. These are the only proof left. Caleb drew his pistol. Stay here. I'm going after Cutter. Not alone, Clara said. Clara, you are wounded. You cannot fight. Watch me. She slid off the horse before anyone could stop her and grabbed a rifle from the nearest abandoned wagon. The weapon was heavy, awkward to handle with one arm in a sling, but she had been shooting since she was 5 years old. She could manage. Caleb and Elijah exchanged a look, but there was no time to argue. The gunmen were already retreating, their robbery complete. Caleb rode hard to cut them off, positioning himself at the intersection of Main Street and the road leading out of town. It was a foolish move, 1 man against 6, but he did not hesitate. "Cutter!" he shouted. His voice carried over the roar of the flames. Silas Cutter pulled his horse to a stop. His scarred face split into a grin when he recognized Caleb. "Beckett," he called back. "Or should I say Mercer? Still playing hero, I see." "Step down," Caleb said. "It's over." Cutter laughed. "Over? Boy, it ain't even started." He raised his pistol. "You know what Maddox offered for your head? $5,000. That's more than the bank job paid." The other gunmen spread out, circling Caleb like wolves around wounded prey. Clara did not wait to see what would happen next. She raised her rifle, braced it against a water trough for support, and took aim. She fired. The shot took one of the gunmen through the chest. He tumbled from his saddle and did not move. Before the others could react, another shot rang out from somewhere above. A second gunman dropped, then a third. Clara looked up and saw Elijah on the roof of the general store, his rifle smoking. Silas Cutter's grin faded. He wheeled his horse toward Clara, raising his pistol. Caleb shot first. The bullet caught Cutter in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The outlaw swore viciously and dug his spurs into his horse's flanks, fleeing down the road with the last remaining gunman. Caleb started to follow, but Clara called out to him. "Let him go. There are people trapped." She was right. Screams were coming from one of the burning buildings. Dr. Winters was trying to get inside, but the flames were too fierce. Clara ran to help, ignoring the pain that lanced through her shoulder with every step. Together they managed to pull 2 people from the wreckage, a woman and a young boy, before the roof collapsed. By the time the fires were under control, the sun had set and Boise looked like a battlefield. 6 buildings were destroyed. 2 people were dead. And the land registry office, with every record it contained, was nothing but ashes. They gathered in Tucker's saloon, the only public building still intact. The town sheriff, an elderly man named Randall Webb, sat slumped at a table looking 10 years older than he had that morning. "Maddox," he said, shaking his head. "It has to be Maddox. But I cannot prove it." "The men who did this work for him," Caleb said. "Silas Cutter led the attack. He's one of Maddox's top enforcers." "Cutter." Sheriff Webb sighed. "Even if I arrested him, it would be his word against yours. Maddox owns half the judges in the territory. He'd be out before the ink was dry on the paperwork." Clara stepped forward. "I have proof." Every eye in the room turned to her. She pulled the papers from inside her coat and spread them on the table. Land deeds showing illegal transfers. A journal documenting every crime Maddox has committed in this valley for the past 10 years. And a letter from my mother proving that half of Maddox's fortune was stolen from my family. Sheriff Webb stared at the documents. "Where did you get these?" "My father hid them before he died. He knew Maddox would come for them eventually." Whiskey Bill Tucker leaned over to look at the papers. "Sweet Lord," he muttered. "If this is all true—" "It is true," Clara said, "every word. And I'm going to use it to destroy him." Sheriff Webb rubbed his face with both hands. "Miss Thorne, even with this evidence, I cannot arrest Victor Maddox. He is too powerful. His men would burn down the rest of this town before I got him to a cell." "Then send for help," Caleb said. "Wire the territorial governor. Send a marshal. Do something." "He'll try," the sheriff said. "But even if the governor responds, it will take weeks for help to arrive, and Maddox is not going to wait weeks." "He wants a meeting," Clara said. "Red Canyon. Saturday. That's tomorrow." Everyone in the room went very quiet. "You're not going," Caleb said. "Yes, I am." "Clara, that is obviously a trap." "Of course it's a trap. But what choice do I have?" Clara looked around the room at the frightened faces of her neighbors. "He burned down half the town tonight. If I don't show up tomorrow, he will burn the rest. He will kill everyone here just to prove he can." Nobody argued with that. "I will go with you," Caleb said. "So will I," Elijah added. Clara shook her head. "No, if all three of us show up together, they will know we are planning something. I need you both somewhere else. Somewhere you can do some good." "Like where?" Clara turned to Sheriff Webb. "You said you would wire the territorial governor. How long would it take for a message to reach him? If I send it tonight, maybe a day. But like I said, even if he responds immediately, it will be weeks before anyone arrives." "I don't need anyone to arrive," Clara said. "I just need proof that the message was sent. I need Maddox to know that even if he kills me, the truth is already out there." She saw understanding dawn in Caleb's eyes. "You want to bluff him?" he said. "I want to beat him," Clara corrected. "Send the wire tonight. Tomorrow, when I meet with Maddox, I will tell him the governor already has copies of everything. Every document. Every piece of evidence. I will tell him that killing me will not stop the investigation. It will only guarantee his conviction. What if he doesn't believe you? Then I will shoot him myself." Clara expected someone to argue with her. Instead, she saw something like admiration in the eyes of the people around her. "You've got guts, girl," Whiskey Bill said. "Your daddy would be proud." Sheriff Webb nodded slowly. "He'll send the wire tonight, and I will gather whatever men I can to back you up tomorrow. It's not much, but it's something." "Thank you," Clara said. "Don't thank me yet. We're a long way from winning this fight." The meeting broke up shortly after. Clara was about to head back to the clinic to rest when Elijah caught her arm. "Can we talk?" he said, "alone." Clara glanced at Caleb, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. She nodded. They walked outside, away from the noise and the smell of smoke. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. "What is it?" Clara asked. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you from the beginning." "I'm listening. When I first came here after I found out Pa was dead, I did not just come for the land." He paused. "Someone paid me to come." Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "Who?" "A man in San Francisco. He said he represented a company that wanted to buy property in Idaho. He offered me $1,000 to come here, claim my share of the Thorne Ranch, and convince you to sell. You were working for Maddox." "I did not know it was Maddox, not at first. All I knew was that someone wanted your land and was willing to pay handsomely for it. I figured, why not? I was angry at Pa, angry at you for having the life I never had. I did not care who got hurt." Clara stared at him. She wanted to feel betrayed. She wanted to feel angry. Instead, she just felt tired. "What changed?" she asked. "I met you," Elijah said simply. "I saw the way you lived, the way you fought. You reminded me of Ma back before she got sick. Strong, stubborn, unwilling to back down no matter what. That does not excuse what you did. No, it does not. But I'm trying to make it right now. That's why I saved the journal. That's why I've been helping you. I know I cannot undo the past, but I can try to give you a future." Clara looked at her half-brother in the starlight. His face was earnest, open, nothing like the calculating man who had shown up at her ranch 6 weeks ago demanding his share of what did not belong to him. Maybe people really could change. Or maybe this was just another lie, another manipulation. There was only one way to find out. "All right," she said. "I am going to trust you, but Elijah, if you betray me again, I will kill you myself. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. Then let's go get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." They walked back toward the clinic together, half-brother and half-sister, united by blood and by a common enemy. Behind them, a figure detached itself from the shadows and slipped away into the night, watching, waiting. The game was far from over. The morning of the meeting dawned cold and gray. Clouds had rolled in overnight, turning the sky the color of old bruises. Clara dressed carefully, choosing practical clothes that allowed freedom of movement. She strapped her father's pistol to her hip and tucked the precious documents inside her coat, close to her heart. When she emerged from the clinic, she found Caleb waiting for her, his horse already saddled. "I thought I told you not to come," she said. "You told me not to show up at Red Canyon. You did not say anything about riding with you part of the way." He fell into step beside her. "I will be nearby. If something goes wrong, I will hear the shots." "And then what? You will ride in and rescue me like some knight from a storybook? Something like that." Clara almost smiled. "I am not a damsel in distress, Mr. Beckett." "No, you are not. But you are also not invincible." Caleb stopped walking and turned to face her. "Clara, I know you think you have to do this alone, but you do not. Elijah and I, we want to help. We want to see Maddox brought down just as much as you do." "I know," Clara said softly. Clara said, "And I appreciate it. But this is my fight, my land, my family. I have to be the one to face him." Caleb was silent for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, his silver ring. "This belonged to my father," he said. "He gave it to me the day I became a marshal. He told me it would protect me, keep me safe. He was wrong about that. But it has reminded me, every day since Rebecca died, why I keep fighting." He pressed the ring into Clara's palm. "I want you to have it," he said, "not for protection, but to remind you that you are not alone, that there are people who care what happens to you." Clara looked down at the ring, its surface worn smooth by years of use. She thought about her father's warning, the fevered words of a dying man. Don't trust the man with the silver ring. But looking into Caleb's eyes now, she saw no deception, no manipulation, just a man who had lost everything and was still trying to do what was right. She closed her fingers around the ring and slipped it into her pocket. "Thank you," she said. "Come back alive," Caleb said. "That's all I ask. I intend to." Red Canyon was an hour's ride from Boise, a narrow gorge carved into the hillside by centuries of wind and water. The walls rose 50 feet on either side, red and orange rock striped with layers of gray. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Clara rode in alone, her horse picking its way carefully over the rocky ground. She could feel eyes on her, watching from the cliff tops above, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would only get her killed. At the center of the canyon, a group of riders waited. There were 10 of them, maybe more, hard-faced men with guns on their hips and rifles across their saddles. In the middle of the group sat a woman on a white horse, Victoria Maddox. Clara had only seen her aunt's face once before, in the old photograph from her mother's grave. But there was no mistaking the resemblance. Victoria had the same dark hair as Eliza, the same high cheekbones, the same intelligent eyes. But where Eliza's face had been warm and open, Victoria's was cold as marble. "Clara Thorne," Victoria said as Clara approached. "At last, we meet." "Aunt Victoria," Clara replied. She kept her voice steady. "Or should I say Mrs. Maddox?" Victoria's expression did not change. "So you know. I know everything. I know you murdered my mother. I know you stole my inheritance. I know you have been trying to run me off my land so you can cover up your crimes. Murder is such an ugly word. Victoria smiled, thin and sharp as a blade. Eliza was weak. She chose sentiment over sense, love over logic. She made herself a target. I simply took advantage of the opportunity. You poisoned her, your own sister. I did what was necessary, just as I am prepared to do what is necessary now. Victoria gestured at the men surrounding her. You are alone, Clara. Outgunned, outmatched. Your only chance of surviving this day is to give me those documents and walk away. Clara shook her head. Even if I gave you the papers, you would kill me anyway, perhaps. But I am offering you the chance to die quickly, painlessly. The alternative is less pleasant. The alternative, Clara said, is that I walk out of here and you spend the rest of your life rotting in a cell. Or maybe you hang. I'm told they hang murderers in Idaho territory. Victoria laughed. And what makes you think that will happen? Because the territorial governor already has copies of everything. Clara reached into her coat and pulled out the documents. Every piece of evidence my father collected, every deed you forged, every person you killed or drove off their land. I sent it all yesterday, along with a sworn statement naming you and your husband as the perpetrators. It was a bluff. The governor had received a wire, yes, but not the actual documents. Those were still in Clara's possession. But Victoria did not know that. For the first time, something like uncertainty flickered across the older woman's face. You are lying. Am I? Clara met her aunt's eyes without flinching. Even if you kill me right here, right now, it will not change anything. The investigation has already begun. The truth is already out there. All you can do now is decide how this ends for you. Surrender or run? Victoria was silent for a long moment. Clara could see the calculations happening behind her cold eyes. Then Victoria smiled again, and Clara knew she had miscalculated. You are good, Victoria said. I will give you that. You almost had me convinced. But there is one thing you forgot. What is that? My husband does not run from anyone. She raised her hand, and Clara heard the sound of a hammer being cocked somewhere behind her. Victor Maddox does not run, Victoria repeated. He solves problems. And right now you are a problem. Clara turned in her saddle and saw Silas Cutter emerging from behind a boulder, his pistol aimed at her heart. Drop your gun, he said. Slow. Clara had no choice. She let her pistol fall to the ground. Now the papers. If I give you the papers, you will kill me. Maybe, or maybe not. Depends on whether you behave yourself. Clara hesitated. She could see no way out. The canyon walls were too steep to climb. The gunman had her surrounded, and Caleb, wherever he was, could not possibly reach her in time. Then she heard it, a single rifle shot, impossibly loud in the enclosed space of the canyon. Silas Cutter's pistol flew from his hand as the bullet struck his wrist. Another shot, another. Men were falling, crying out in pain. Clara did not waste the opportunity. She threw herself from her horse and rolled behind a boulder as bullets began flying in all directions. She looked up at the canyon rim and saw Elijah, his rifle smoking, and behind him, emerging from the rocks like avenging angels, a dozen men on horseback. The cavalry, someone shouted. The territorial cavalry is here. Victoria Maddox's face went white. Retreat, she screamed. Fall back! But it was too late. The horsemen poured into the canyon from both ends, cutting off any escape. Within minutes, the fight was over. Clara emerged from behind her boulder to find Silas Cutter on the ground, clutching his wounded wrist. Victoria Maddox was being pulled from her horse by two soldiers. And standing at the center of the chaos, looking exactly like the answer to a prayer, was Caleb Beckett. How? Clara asked. Caleb grinned. Turns out Elijah knows some people. He made contact last night while you were sleeping. Convinced the garrison commander that Maddox was a threat to the whole territory. The garrison commander, a gruff man with a thick mustache, rode up to Clara and tipped his hat. Miss Thorne, he said. I am Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb. We have been watching Maddox for some time, but never had enough evidence to move against him. Your friend here tells me you might have what we need. Clara pulled the documents from inside her coat, now crumpled and dirt-stained, but still intact. Everything, she said. Every crime he has committed for the past 10 years. Colonel Webb took the papers and scanned them quickly. His expression hardened. This is more than enough. He looked at his men. Take Mrs. Maddox into custody. We ride for Boise within the hour. What about Victor Maddox? Clara asked. He was not here. No, Colonel Webb said, but he will be at his ranch waiting for good news. I intend to deliver him some bad news instead. Clara looked at the woman who had killed her mother, stolen her inheritance, and tried to destroy everything her family had built. Victoria Maddox's face was a mask of cold fury, but underneath Clara could see something else. Fear. Good, Clara thought. She should be afraid. This is not over, Victoria spat as they led her away. Victor will come for you. He will destroy you. He can try, Clara said, and she almost meant it. The ride to the Maddox ranch took most of the afternoon. Colonel Webb had sent riders ahead to scout the approach, and their reports came back grim. At least 20 men, the lead scout said, armed and fortified. They know we are coming. Then we had better not keep them waiting, Colonel Webb replied. Clara insisted on riding with the soldiers, despite Caleb's objections. This is my fight, she said. I started it. I am going to finish it. Caleb did not argue further. The Maddox ranch was nothing like Clara had expected. She had imagined something grand, a mansion befitting the vast fortune Victor Maddox had accumulated. Instead, she found a fortress. The main house was built like a blockhouse, thick timber walls with narrow windows designed for shooting through. A wooden palisade surrounded the compound with guard towers at each corner. Armed men patrolled the perimeter. This is not a ranch, Elijah muttered. This is a damn army post. Colonel Webb ordered his men into formation. Maddox, he shouted. Victor Maddox, come out and surrender. You are charged with murder, theft, and conspiracy against the territory of Idaho. Silence. Then a voice echoed from inside the compound. Colonel Webb. What an unexpected pleasure. A man appeared at the top of the palisade. He was perhaps 60 years old, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome once before it hardened into cruelty. He wore a tailored suit that looked absurdly out of place in this wilderness, and he smiled down at the assembled soldiers like a king greeting his subjects. Victor Maddox. I am afraid there has been some misunderstanding, Maddox said. I am a businessman, nothing more. Whatever accusations have been made against me, I assure you they are baseless. We have evidence, Colonel Webb said. Documents, witnesses. Your wife has already been taken into custody. Something flickered across Maddox's face. Victoria? She is alive, Clara said, speaking up for the first time. For now, how long she stays that way depends on you. Maddox's eyes found her in the crowd. Ah, the Thorn girl. He shook his head sadly. So much trouble over a worthless piece of dirt. Your mother was the same way. Sentimental, foolish. My mother was murdered, Clara said. By your wife. On your orders. Can you prove that? I don't have to prove it. Clara held up the documents. These do it for me. Maddox studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. Very well, he said. If you insist on doing this the hard way. He raised his hand and the gates of the compound swung open. Armed men poured out, at least 30 of them, taking up defensive positions behind barrels and wagons and anything else that offered cover. Colonel Webb swore under his breath. He has more men than we thought. We can still take them, one of his officers said. Maybe. But it will cost us. Clara looked at the fortified compound, at the army of hired guns waiting to defend it. She thought about everything Maddox had done, everyone he had hurt. Her mother, her father, Rebecca. All the families who had lost their homes, their livelihoods, their lives. It had to end here, today. She dug her heels into her horse's flanks and rode forward before anyone could stop her. Clara! Caleb shouted. What are you doing? Ending this, she called back. She rode right up to the gates, stopping just out of pistol range. "Maddox," she shouted. "You want to talk? Let's talk. Just you and me." Maddox appeared at the gate, surrounded by his men. He looked amused. "You have courage," he said. "I will give you that. What do you want to talk about?" "Terms," Clara said. "You have an army. We have an army. We could fight it out and see who is left standing at the end. Or we could settle this another way. What way is that? A duel, you and me, right here, right now. Winner takes all." Maddox laughed. "You want to challenge me to a duel? A little girl against a man who has killed more people than you have met?" "I am not a little girl," Clara said, "and I am betting my aim is better than yours." Maddox stopped laughing. He studied her face for a long moment. "And if I win? Then your men let these soldiers go. No more bloodshed. No more killing. And if you win, you come with us, peacefully. You stand trial for your crimes." Maddox considered this. Around him, his men shifted nervously. Behind Clara, she could hear Colonel Webb arguing with Caleb. "All right," Maddox said finally. "I accept." He stepped forward, drawing a pistol from inside his coat. It was a beautiful weapon, silver chased with gold, obviously expensive. Clara dismounted and walked to meet him. Her father's pistol felt heavy on her hip. They stopped 10 paces apart. "On the count of 3, Maddox said. "On the count of 3, Clara agreed. 1. Clara watched his eyes. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 5 years old. He had also taught her to watch her opponent's eyes, to read their intentions in the tiny movements of their pupils. 2. She saw it. The flicker. The tell. 3. Maddox's hand moved toward his pistol. Clara drew and fired in a single motion. The bullet caught Maddox in the shoulder, spinning him around. His own shot went wild, missing Clara by 3 feet. He stumbled, clutching his wound, staring at her in disbelief. "You!" he gasped. "You cheated." "No," Clara said. "I just paid attention." She walked toward him, her pistol still raised. Maddox's men were watching in shocked silence. None of them moved to help their employer. "It's over," Clara said. "You lost." For a moment, she thought he would accept defeat. Then his face twisted with rage and he lunged toward her, a knife appearing in his hand as if by magic. Clara fired again. This time, the bullet took him in the leg. He collapsed, the knife clattering from his grip. "It's over," Clara repeated. And this time it was. The arrests took most of the evening. Maddox's men, seeing their employer lying wounded and helpless, surrendered without a fight. Colonel Webb took statements from everyone involved and sent riders to bring back the territorial judge. Clara watched it all from a distance, feeling strangely empty. She had expected to feel triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. Caleb found her sitting on a fence post watching the sunset. "You did good today," he said. "I shot a man. 2 shots. In cold blood. In self-defense. He drew on you." "Did he? Or did I draw first?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter?" Clara thought about it. "Maybe not," she said finally. "Maybe that's the problem." They sat in silence as the sky turned from orange to purple to black. "What happens now?" Clara asked eventually. "Maddox goes to trial. Victoria, too. With the evidence we have, they will both hang. And then? And then it's over." Caleb hesitated. "I suppose I should move on. Find the next fight. That's what I do." "Is it?" He looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean you have been running for 3 years, hunting, trying to avenge your wife. Well, Maddox is done. His people are done. The man who killed Rebecca is going to pay for his crimes." Clara met his eyes. "So, what happens now? Do you keep running? Or do you find something worth staying for?" Caleb did not answer, but she saw something shift in his expression, some wall coming down that had been up for years. "I don't know," he said honestly. I have been running so long. I forgot how to stop. Maybe I can help you remember. She reached out and took his hand. He did not pull away. They stayed like that, watching the stars come out, neither of them speaking. Some wounds, Clara thought, take a long time to heal. But maybe with the right person, they could heal together. The weeks following Maddox's capture were chaotic. The territorial governor sent representatives to Boise to oversee the legal proceedings. Lawyers arrived from Denver and San Francisco. Reporters came from as far away as New York, eager to tell the story of the rancher's daughter who brought down an empire. Through it all, Clara tried to maintain some sense of normalcy. She returned to her ranch, now scarred but still standing, and began the long process of rebuilding. Caleb stayed to help, as did Elijah. It was strange, Clara thought, how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had gone from being completely alone to having two men she could almost call family. Almost. There was still tension between her and Elijah, unspoken questions that hung in the air between them. She had forgiven him for his initial deception, or at least she thought she had. But trust was harder to rebuild than a burned barn. And there was tension with Caleb too, though of a different kind. Something was growing between them, something neither of them had named or acknowledged. Clara caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read. And she caught herself watching him, wondering what might happen when all this was over. But first there was the trial. It began on a Monday in late October, in the largest building in Boise that had survived the fires. The territorial judge, a stern-faced man named Harrington, presided. Victor Maddox sat at the defendant's table, his wounded shoulder still bandaged, his face a mask of cold contempt. Victoria sat beside him, her expression equally icy. Clara was the first witness called. She told her story from the beginning, the night she was shot, her father's journal, the evidence she had found in her mother's grave, the conspiracy that had stretched across decades and territories, destroying lives and stealing fortunes. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. The defense attorney, a slick-haired man from Chicago, tried his best to discredit her testimony. He suggested she was motivated by greed. He implied the documents were forged. He questioned her memory, her judgment, her sanity. Clara answered every question calmly and clearly. "I am not here for money," she said at one point. "I have more than I will ever need. I am here because my mother was murdered, my father was murdered, and the people responsible need to answer for their crimes." The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts. The sentence was death by hanging to be carried out in 30 days. Clara watched as they led Victor and Victoria Maddox away. She felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction, not even relief. Just emptiness. Caleb found her outside the courthouse, sitting on a bench and staring at nothing. "You all right?" he asked. "I thought I would feel different," Clara said. "I thought when it was over I would feel happy, or at least at peace." "And you don't?" "I feel like there should be more. Like winning should mean something." Caleb sat down beside her. "Maybe winning is not the point. Then what is?" He thought about it for a moment. "When Rebecca died, I wanted revenge. I wanted to make everyone responsible suffer the way I was suffering. I thought that would fix things, that it would bring her back somehow, or at least make losing her hurt less." He shook his head. "It didn't. Nothing can bring back the people we lost. Nothing can undo what was done to them. So why do we fight? Because it's right. Because the people who hurt others should not be allowed to keep hurting them. Because justice matters, even when it does not heal everything." Caleb looked at her. "You did a good thing, Clara. You stopped them. You saved other people from going through what you went through. That counts for something." "Does it?" "It has to. Otherwise, why do any of this?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I keep thinking about my mother. About how different things would have been if she had lived. If Victoria had not killed her. You cannot change the past." "I know. But I can build something for the future. Something she would have been proud of. What kind of something? I do not know yet. Clara looked out at the street, at the people going about their daily lives. But I think I want to find out. They sat together as the sun moved across the sky, neither of them speaking, both of them thinking about what came next. The execution was held at dawn on a cold November morning. Clara did not attend. She had seen enough of Victor and Victoria Maddox. She did not need to watch them die. Instead, she stayed at her ranch, sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up over the mountains. Caleb found her there when he rode up an hour later. "It's done," he said. Clara nodded. "I know." He dismounted and joined her on the porch. They sat in silence for a while. "What happens now?" Clara asked finally. "I was thinking about that," Caleb said. "I have been running for 3 years. Hunting. Looking for something I thought I lost." He paused. "I found it, but it was not what I expected." "What did you find?" "A reason to stop running." Clara turned to look at him. His gray eyes were warm in the morning light, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked at peace. "I was thinking," he said slowly, "that maybe I have been looking for a home, a place to belong, a person to belong to. Were you now? And I was thinking that maybe, if you would have me, I might have found it." Clara felt her heart beating faster. "Mr. Beckett, are you asking me something?" "I suppose I am, Miss Thorne." She pretended to consider it. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose this ranch could use another pair of hands. And I suppose you have proven yourself useful enough. Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe, a strong maybe." Caleb smiled, really smiled, and for a moment he looked like a completely different person, someone younger, someone hopeful. "I can work with maybe," he said. "Good," Clara said. "Then let's get to work. There is a lot to rebuild." They stood together looking out at the ranch, at the land that had cost so much and meant so much. The past could not be changed. The dead could not be brought back. But the future was still unwritten, and Clara intended to make it something worth living for. Spring came early that year. Clara stood on her porch watching the snow melt from the mountains and the first green shoots push through the brown grass of the fields. 6 months had passed since the trial. 6 months of rebuilding and healing and learning to live again. The ranch looked better than it ever had. The new barn was larger than the old one, with room for twice as many horses. The fences had been mended and extended. The cattle herd was growing, supplemented by animals recovered from Maddox's operations. And there were other changes, too. Elijah had built himself a cabin about a mile down the road, close enough to help with the ranch work, far enough to give Clara her space. Their relationship was still complicated, but it was getting easier. They had dinner together once a week, and sometimes Elijah would bring his fiddle and play the old songs their father used to sing. Dr. Winters stopped by regularly to check on Clara's shoulder, which had healed cleanly but still ached in cold weather. She always stayed for coffee and conversation, and Clara found herself looking forward to those visits. And then there was Caleb. He had never officially moved into the ranch house, but his things had gradually migrated from the barn to the spare room to Clara's bedroom over the course of the winter. They did not talk about it much. They did not need to. Some things, Clara had learned, did not need to be spoken out loud. She heard hoofbeats and looked up to see Caleb riding toward the house, his horse's breath steaming in the morning air. He had been in town since yesterday, meeting with the Territorial Land Commission about the properties seized from Maddox. "News," he said as he dismounted. "Good news or bad news? Both, I think." Caleb climbed the porch steps and kissed her briefly before settling into the chair beside her. "The commission has finished reviewing the Maddox assets. Everything he stole is being returned to the original owners or their heirs. That's the good news?" "That is the good news. The bad news is that your share of the Hawthorne inheritance is larger than we thought." Clara frowned. "How is that bad?" "Because half the territory is going to be lining up at your door asking for money. You are going to be the richest woman in Idaho." Clara laughed. I think I can handle that. Can you? Caleb's expression turned serious. Clara, I need to ask you something. All right, when I came here, I was looking for revenge, for justice. I found both, but I also found something I was not looking for. He reached out and took her hand. I found you. Clara felt her heart speed up. Caleb, I know we have not talked about the future, about what happens next. But I need you to know that wherever you go, whatever you do, I want to be there with you. Not as a hired hand or a business partner, as something more. Are you proposing to me, Mr. Beckett? I suppose I am, Miss Thorne. Clara pretended to think about it. Well, she said finally, I suppose someone needs to keep you out of trouble. Is that a yes? It's a yes. Caleb smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face and pulled her into his arms. They stood there on the porch holding each other as the sun rose higher over the mountains. A new day, a new beginning. And for the first time in a very long time, Clara Thorne was looking forward to seeing what came next. The wedding was held in June under the ancient oak tree on the northern hill. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the grand affairs Clara had heard about in San Francisco and Denver. Just family and friends gathered under a blue sky, with wildflowers blooming in the meadow below. Dr. Winters served as the officiant, having gotten herself certified for the occasion. Elijah stood beside Clara, their complicated history set aside for this one day. Whiskey Bill Tucker had closed his saloon for the afternoon and brought half the town with him. Even Sheriff Webb was there, looking uncomfortable in a suit that had clearly been borrowed for the occasion. Dearly beloved, Dr. Winters began, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Clara Thorne and Caleb Mercer. Clara felt Caleb's hand tighten on hers at the mention of his real name. He had stopped hiding it after the trial, stopped pretending to be someone he was not. The charges against him had been dismissed, his reputation cleared. He was free now. They both were. The vows were simple. Clara promised to love him in good times and bad, in sickness and in health, for as long as they both lived. Caleb promised the same, his voice rough with emotion. Then Dr. Winters pronounced them husband and wife, and Caleb kissed her, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Later, as the sun set and the party showed no signs of slowing down, Clara slipped away to visit her mother's grave. She knelt beside the weathered headstone and placed a bouquet of wildflowers at its base. I did it, Mama, she said softly. I saved your land. I brought justice to the people who hurt you, and I found someone to share my life with. I think you would have liked him. She stayed there for a while, talking to the mother she had never known, telling her about everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. When she finally stood to leave, Caleb was waiting for her at the edge of the clearing. You all right? He asked. Better than all right, Clara said. I just wanted to tell her. Tell her what? That we made it. That despite everything, we found our way to something good. Caleb put his arm around her, and together they walked back down the hill toward the lights and music of their wedding celebration. Behind them, the stars came out one by one, scattered across the sky like promises waiting to be kept. 2 years later, Clara sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. The view had not changed much since that terrible night when 4 men had come to take her land and nearly taken her life instead. The mountains still stood guard on the horizon. The creek still sang its way through the valley. The ancient oak on the northern hills still spread its branches toward heaven. But everything else was different. The ranch had grown into something her father would barely recognize. The original 200 acres had expanded to nearly 1,000, absorbing the abandoned properties of families who had fled during the Maddox years. Clara had tracked down those families and offered to buy their land fairly, at prices that made them weep with gratitude. The horse breeding operation that Caleb had started was thriving. They supplied mounts to the territorial cavalry, to ranchers throughout the valley, even to buyers from as far away as Texas. The Thorn Ranch brand, a simple T inside a circle, was becoming known throughout the West. But the thing Clara was most proud of had nothing to do with land or horses. A door opened behind her, and Caleb emerged carrying their daughter. Sarah Eliza Mercer was 18 months old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes. She was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. "Someone wanted to say good night," Caleb said, settling into the chair beside her. Clara took her daughter in her arms and kissed her soft cheek. "Hello, my darling." Sarah babbled something that might have been Mama, or might have been random noise. Either way, Clara's heart swelled. Elijah rode up just as the last light was fading from the sky. He had been in town picking up supplies for his own small ranch down the road. "Evening, sister," he said, tipping his hat. "Evening, brother-in-law." "Evening, favorite niece." "She is your only niece," Clara pointed out. "For now," Elijah said with a grin. Clara and Caleb exchanged a look. They had not told anyone yet, but there would be another baby by spring. Clara was waiting for the right moment to share the news. "How was town?" Caleb asked. "Busy," Elijah said. "That new railroad spur is bringing in more people every week. Pretty soon Boise will be a proper city." "Is that a good thing?" "Depends who you ask. The merchants are happy. The old-timers are grumpy. So about normal." They sat together as the stars came out. 3 people who had started as strangers and enemies and become family. It was not the family any of them had expected, but it was the family they had built together, out of tragedy and trust and hard-won love. "I have been thinking," Clara said eventually. "About what?" Caleb asked. "About all of it. Everything that happened. Sometimes I wonder if things could have gone differently. If I could have done something sooner, saved more people." "You saved plenty," Elijah said. "You saved the whole valley." "I know. But it cost so much." Caleb reached over and took her hand. "Clara, listen to me. You cannot save everyone. You cannot undo the past. All you can do is make the future better, and that is exactly what you have done. We did it together, then we did it together. The point is, it was worth it. All the pain, all the struggle, all the loss. It brought us here, to this moment, to this family." Clara looked at her daughter, already falling asleep in her arms. She thought about her mother, buried on the hill above them, finally at peace. She thought about her father, whose courage and foresight had made all of this possible. And she thought about herself, the woman she had become through fire and blood and love. "I suppose you are right," she said. "It was worth it." "Of course I am right," Caleb said. "I am always right." Elijah snorted. "You keep telling yourself that, brother." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the valley like music. Later, after Elijah had gone home and Sarah had been put to bed, Clara stood at her bedroom window looking out at the land that had cost so much and given her so much in return. Caleb came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The future," Clara said. "What it might hold." "Anything specific?" "I was thinking that I would like to build a school for the children in the valley. A proper school with a proper teacher. That is a good idea. And maybe a church. Not a fancy one. Just a place where people can gather and find comfort. Also good." "And I was thinking," Clara said, turning in his arms to face him, "that it might be time to tell our family about the new baby." Caleb's face lit up. "The new," he stopped, staring at her. "Clara, are you saying what I think you're saying? I am saying that come spring, Sarah is going to have a little brother or sister." For a moment, Caleb seemed unable to speak. Then he let out a whoop of joy and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the room. "Put me down," Clara laughed. "You will wake the baby." "I do not care," Caleb said, but he put her down anyway. "Clara, this is the best news. This is the best thing. I thought you might be happy. Happy does not even begin to cover it." He kissed her, long and deep, and when he pulled back, there were tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. for everything, for giving me a home, a family, a reason to live. You gave me the same things, Clara said. We saved each other. They held each other in the moonlight. Two people who had found their way through darkness to something beautiful. Outside, the valley slept peacefully under a blanket of stars. The creek murmured its endless song. The mountains stood eternal watch over the land that had been paid for in blood and love. And Clara Thorne, who had been shot defending her land, who had been saved by a cowboy who rode her to town while applying pressure to the wound, who had fought and lost and won and built something worth having. Clara Thorne was finally completely home. Some wounds never fully heal. But there are wounds that, when properly tended, become proof of strength, proof that we survived, that we fought, and that we found each other through the storm. This is not a story about revenge or justice or even love. This is a story about home, about finding it, fighting for it, building it from the ashes of everything that came before. Clara Thorne was shot defending her land. A cowboy rode her to town while applying pressure to the wound. But the story did not end there. It was only just beginning. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.